All right. So it's you could say there's kind of gray area or a conflict in the law, but it's immigration law. The only reason we would see that is because if we try to compare it to criminal law, let me turn this fan off here. If we try to compare it to criminal law, it doesn't fit neatly into the little boxes. And that's where the judge tried to fit it into criminal law boxes, and she can't. Because the legislation was created because immigration things are different than criminal law, which means there's most likely the legislators saw that there was a presumption that an immigrant would flee, a violated immigrant, quote unquote. So just because they can prove that they had a good address on file doesn't. At that point, the government has to say, well, this is why they're here. Right. If the government doesn't have a good address for the immigrant on file, the government can pretty much detain. Something like that. That's kind of how it was worded. So there's another process what's happening is there's 2 or 3 different processes. So the judge says you can't randomly go and get them. That's a lie. That's actually the safest way to do it. Now, the officer has to act in good faith. Right. The restriction comes when you go to somebody's house without a warrant, but it doesn't mean that it's an absolute. Most likely, if they go to address, there's another thing. Well, it's just the idea is what you see in news, and this is the part where I don't understand where the judge is, because the judges are looking at the news, and the news media is doing a great job of manipulating the judges. Right. Because one of the things they always see is, oh, they arrested a U.S. citizen and thought they were an illegal immigrant, or whatever they want to call them, undocumented immigrant, whatever it is. Right. They can arrest U.S. citizens for a variety of things, or at least detain. Again, there's 2 things: there's detention and arrest. Right. In immigration law, there's different. It's different. You actually have a kind of non-arrest detention, which is lawful. But there's also in law, again, you have to realize the media is manipulating the judges' minds, because the law enforcement officers arrest people all the time and then drop charges or don't charge. Right. ICE is allowed to do the same thing. Right. So we'll get a thing where they won't roll down the window, and then the big to-do happens. They go, oh, this was a U.S. citizen. What are they doing? Well, the U.S. citizen is an idiot. Right. They don't have to have problems. They roll down their window. Here's my license, officer. Okay, bye. Right. So if the sheriff's department pulled that same person over, the same thing would happen. Right. It's kind of a new twist on the sovereign citizen argument. But I'm a U.S. citizen. Okay. So again, what again, the psyopers, the people that are spies that are manipulating everyone, have took the sovereign citizen bullshit and turned it into immigration law. But I'm a U.S. citizen. Yeah, that's fine. Right. But there are things that we need to establish before. The law allows a lot of stuff. For immigration officers can do a lot of different things. And again, what was the reasoning behind the legislation? Because they presented to the legislators, the government presented to legislators a situation that we see in the news all the time. They flee. So the standard that we're using for the average American doesn't work for this unlawful immigrant that's here because they either were or have never been lawfully here. the trouble for the government would come is if somebody is lawfully doing the process, which is happening, in a lot of the cases, and they go to get them without a warrant. But it doesn't mean that they don't have a warrant. Right? If they have a removal order, then that's no problem. But again, the judge is kind of almost backwards. I don't think she understands what the the spirit of the law. The spirit of the law is so that immigration officers don't have to spend the next 10 years going after 10 million people. That when the opportunity arises, then they can do something, like immediately. And again, it's not even reasonable suspicion. It's just kind of a good faith, is what it is. If an officer believes in good faith, right, that this particular person would flee before they could obtain a warrant, which would probably happen. I mean, the officer doesn't have to prove case by case. The judge is saying that. No, they don't. Now, when they get to the courtroom after detention, that's where they have to. And this is what I think Bavino was trying. First, I thought Bavino was off base. But I think this is what Bavino is trying to articulate. And again, he called it reasonable suspicion. And I don't even think it's that. I think it's good faith. Right. That just shows you. It's just in good faith, if you believe. And again, so what's the question? Again, the question comes up in the mind meld there. In good faith, so what's the remedy if they do it in bad faith? I don't know. I don't think it says anything. I mean, they could sue maybe. I mean, that's usually what you do in a bad faith situation. Right. And we're starting to see that. I don't even think it's reasonable suspicion. I think it's just good faith. If in good faith you believe that person's going to flee as a unlawfully present immigrant, then right. I don't even know if they have to be unlawfully present, to tell you the truth, as far as an immigrant. Again, immigration law is weird. And I guarantee it's because everybody knows they're going to flee. Everybody that drafted that law was presented with things, and they said, well, these people are going to flee. Now, I was reading a news article, and it kind of I misread it. It's again, it was Melania Trump's. I thought I didn't read the news article. I just read the title, and but it gave, again, Hashem did it so I could think through this. But it was Melania Trump's attorney saying that getting rid of dual citizenship is probably not a good idea. I don't see a lot of advantage out of it because I thought maybe it was a tax shelter or something, but it's not. So, but the one thing that AI did find was that people that have dual citizenship are less likely to worry about being deported. Which doesn't make sense to me because I think once you have citizenship, right. So, but maybe in some countries, that's, right. I guess dual citizen, yeah, that's what that is, right, yeah. I was thinking about more you see more of that process in illegal immigrants. I think in the United States you can't be deported if you're a citizen. Right. So I don't know. Some countries maybe that's true. But the way I read it was, just his attorney, Melania is an immigrant. How could they do this? But you have to understand when Melania Trump and others like her immigrated, it was a whole different world. We didn't have the issues we had. What they did is they figured out how to beat our immigration law. Right. Or at least pseudo beat it, Now we're fixing it. Right. So again, the idea is we're not going to end immigration for all time, but we have to fix this. We can't allow this to go on. It's empowering narcotics distribution. I don't care I've been in those communities. I know what's going on. First off, they're supremacists and they hate white people, okay? So I'm not here to play that game. Correct. And they commit crimes against white people all day, and Latino cops laugh with them and go off and have sex, because it is sex-based and psychosexual. Supremacy is psychosexual. Thank you, Larry. So that's the first part of it. The second part of it is that it's empowering narcotics distribution. They're okay with it. In other words, the third world country standard. How does it benefit me? Benefits me, then it's okay. And that's how dirty cops became so dirty. All that money, all that community. You dirty cop in a Latino community, a Latino illegal immigrant community, you're a hero. You're a hero to those people. Right. So again, why not? Go to the club, do some salsa, walk out with 3 women, right? Because you're the hero. 1%. Again, that's third world countryism. Correct. So again, there is something wrong with those communities. Now, each person has a right to be treated fairly and lawfully, but we've gotten to the point where we can't control what's happening. And the reason there's a metaphysical reason that our people are addicted to narcotics, because they have the people that are selling the narcotics and the community that supports them. Yeah, come into my store and spend your $1,000. Come into my bar, spend your $2,000. Believe me, there's bars out there. I don't know if people know. You go in there, you spend $2,000, $3,000 like a rich person, but they're drug dealers. $5,000, they don't care. Right. That money gives them a metaphysical status, and then dirty cops and dirty politicians give them status. They prefer to represent them than they do me because I don't have the money to bribe them with. Right. In fact, the system that attacked my life made sure I didn't have enough money to bribe them, whether they call it a donation or something else, because a donation is a bribe system. Both in or at least criminal proceeds laundering, that type of bribe, type of financial arrangement. Right? It's in religion, and it's also in the 2 places where we see the word donation. Actually, the 3: religion, charity, and fake charity. Like the one that Paul spoke about, and even worse. And Paul added, even worse. Thank you, Lee. And politicians. Right. Well, because you get rid of the unlawful immigrant community, you may not have. The thing is this for Democrats: if you would go to what people really want instead of trying to push the bullshit system that enriches you and empowers you with thugs and everything in the street, and Republicans have been known to do it. So again, I was speaking to them about it also before. Then you would get money from people that were lawfully here and weren't selling drugs. Because Democrats would lose a big part of their support network. They empower. I said it 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Right. I said it in Chicago. Politicians are put in by the narcos. Right. So again, they saw that system that was broke, and they tried to fix it by lessening the standard. Because why? Because there is a presumption, a small amount of rebuttable presumption that unlawful immigrants, undocumented immigrants, illegal immigrants, people that are unlawfully here will flee. You see it in the news every day. That's the part I don't understand. The judge can see in the news that they're fleeing. Maybe the judge feels sorry because they flee, but if that was a U.S. citizen, they would most likely would stand there, say yes, officer, no, officer, and then go get detained. Right. Now, we do see online, some people do fight, but there's a small percentage of Americans. Right. I mean, it's getting larger, but why? Again, the metaphysics, becoming a third world country. They're out about it too. It's not just metaphysically blocking my life, immigrants. It's full on physical. And who's empowering? FBI, DEA, Marshal Service, all the corrupt people, local police, politicians. No, the metaphysics, again, it's the same thing I'm explaining about being gay and trans. It's the same thing. Using drugs is the same thing. The metaphysics require them to do it. So again, when we get to the metaphysical, we get to what's taught by Srila Prabhupada and the Hare Krishna, is that everything's God's energy. So everybody is seeking God's energy, but there's inferior energy of God. And that's what's happening. But then again, the people that are spelling them to it, they're actually, that's the part that Srila Prabhupada didn't have. Like, why do people seek the inferior energies of God? Because they're wired to it by devils. And part of what we're doing here now is by letting all these people in that have more money and more status. Well, if your boss pays money, you're protected. That's how it works. So, well, Latinos, let's face it, who's bringing the narcotics in? Am I profiling by saying this? No. You're profiling by doing it. Judge Rosenberg said, he brought up the profiling argument. He's a magistrate. I don't know. I have no idea why he was never a district judge. Maybe he didn't want to be one, I guess. Because he's probably one of the greatest judges, per se, that ever existed. I mean, I don't think anybody would be against him being a judge. Maybe somebody didn't like him. I don't know. But so, but Judge Rosenberg, they try to bring up the profiling argument. Judge Rosenberg said, look, I'm not even going to go there. He said, if the whatever it is says that it's a green Martian, then we look for green Martians. Right. Right. Cops profile all day long, theoretically, but lawfully profile. And that's the fact. Again, there is bias and prejudice, but you can't say because there's bias and prejudice that we can't face reality. Right. No, you can't put a probable cause standard on detaining even overnight or something like that, as far as an immigrant. And again, I guess it is in the criminal law. And again, it's probably what she's saying is you have to come up with like a full case to detain. You can't. You actually can't. And this says you can't go do that. Yeah, they can go do that. The only thing is that they've moved what they do on the edge of the nation into the interior because they're in the interior. Right. That's the only thing. It's again, there's policy, there's law. Again, a lot of people will throw policy out there as law when it's not. I'm not approving of everything. I'll tell you right now, ICE officers don't approve of everything that Trump's doing. The Marshal Service deputies don't approve of everything a judge does, or what a mayor does, or what a governor does. Or I mean, again, everybody has their opinions because we're all assholes. Yeah, Jesus said that, not me. No, he didn't. I'm just joking. He must be here. Where you at? Where you at, Jesus? Oh, Oh, you won't answer because your name's Yeshua. Where you at, Yeshua? Oh, there's a rabbi here. Oh, Yeshua and I are great. Right. No, Judge Rosenberg would have made a great district judge. I never thought of it when I was there because I was asleep, you know? Like, why isn't this guy a district judge? I would ask the question, why isn't Rosenberg a district judge? They killed, what's his name, Connolly? Was it Connolly the one they killed? He turned his siren on and drove down the street. That's a psyop. That's a psyop by the deep state, right? They can get you to speed. They can get you to turn your siren on. They can get you to look up people on the computer. But at least I had a real investigation going, right? Well, the Marshal Service, this is what I believe has happened. The Marshal Service, Internal Affairs, was attempting to figure out what the hell was going on. But the CIA was involved, so they couldn't outpace it. Right. Usually in a case like mine, before it would have gotten to what it did, because of the egregiousness of the offenses of the other employees and their contacts outside the Marshal Service and all that, and see, that's what they're saying. That's where they were trying to get to. Like, who are these people, and what are who are our employees making deals with? Right. But usually I would be moved to headquarters or something like that, or another district at least, but probably headquarters for me. Right. And deputies may have been seers and saw that because they kept saying shit like that. Oh, you're going to be an inspector. I'm like, and? Not that I'm actually seeking this, but why wouldn't I be an inspector? I'm doing the work. Right. I've been doing the work since probably the second year here. And then have me off, like more deputies would have called me. Hey, more, how do we do that? I can't remember that guy's name that went to ATF. He used to call me. The guy, Super Court. I can't remember his name. I had his name for like the first few years, and then it went boop. He erased himself. Oh, you don't remember me. I remember he had like a master's in history or something. But he had power. I didn't know what it was. Like he says to me, I was like amazed. We're sitting there. He's like, "My life is like a sitcom." He'd always say that, and then you'd go somewhere, and you'd be in the middle of a sitcom. We were protecting Star, and we had to go like do some subpoenas or something to help out. Whatchamacallit over there. Super Court. Actually, probably weren't supposed to do it, but we were like, Gates got some downtime. Star was going to be in the office for a while. I think we had a couple DC PD guys over at the office with a couple deputies, right? And then, of course, get an FBI agent or two, and then FBI across the street, right? And all their security people. So yeah, we went in and I'm like, oh my God, we're in a sitcom. But I'm like totally asleep, so I have no clue. He actually would be against the Afghan thing because he had a Muhaddin homeless dude that used to live with him every so often. He took a Muhaddin homeless guy in every so often. But he wasn't like a radical or anything. He had like one leg. He like lost his leg in the war. So I think they allowed him to come up to the United States. But he ended up homeless. See, again, there's another issue. He ended up homeless. They weren't watching him, and they weren't watching, what's his name? Bin Laden. We could have dissuaded Bin Laden, right? They just didn't do it. And then once it happened, it was too late, right? Pay attention to detail again, right? It's the key to everything. You're in the army, you're like, oh, man, but it's actually the key to everything. Right? Thanks, sorry. Again, the Afghanis here, let's pay attention to detail, we'll fix it, and they won't be a problem. The administration has to watch what they're doing, because when they go over, they don't need to go that far. Then they go over trying to protect themselves, or at least explain something where they feel comfortable, but they went too far, and then it kind of puts a little bit of dung on that. So I don't think Bovino was off base, but it's reasonable suspicion is the wrong term. Right? It's actually a good faith belief that somebody will flee. That's all they need. Now, that person can argue several arguments at the immigration proceeding. But it's kind of, you're not seeing it right because something's in there, but it's like, there's police officers do this all the time. Right? In good faith, they arrest somebody, but then again, in good faith, sometimes they let somebody go that they could have arrested. You see, right? So that judgment does exist, and does. The only remedy is suing. That's what I believe. Right? For damages. I think that's where we've traditionally been with that kind of bad faith effort. So that's why I'm saying good faith, because the only remedy is bad faith, or is a bad faith lawsuit. She can't change the detention standard off of a lawsuit. Now, possibly she could award them damages. I guess maybe that's what they did the first. That's what I was telling you. This is where it's going to go probably eventually. I was telling you the first administration, you ended up paying money. Right? And your response is, but they didn't make Obama pay money. But okay, but you're both government. And now it's a few years later. Right? So the only remedy is probably a lawsuit and financial damages for specific cases. Again, it's kind of like reversing her order. Now it's on her. Yeah, they have to prove an independent bad faith arrest, and then you award damages. I don't think you can do anything else. Now, this is the gray area that I'm not sure, and it probably Supreme Court would have to decide that. What happens if the judge believes through detention and maybe a erroneous deportation that they've been damaged to the point that they believe they should receive residency? That's like the untested one. But I don't believe the judge can order an adulteration of immigration detention law. Well, it's just like most Americans. The remedy is a bad faith. Sometimes they drop charges. I mean, that does happen. But generally, the remedy is a bad faith arrest, and then you sue. But again, the standard for a bad faith arrest in immigration is a lot higher. Well, because here's an example. You might say they could have come and they could have got a warrant. I work here. I have a house here. They have my address. And then Bovino comes along and he says, but we identified that you did this, you did that, you did this. And that's why we're canceling your amnesty or whatever. Or even if they look at your amnesty case and say this is a bullshit amnesty case, say they hem you up. They say, okay, Bovino's there. You did this, you did that. You are Latino. This is a high concentration of unlawfully present Latinos in this community. You're Latino. You have on the side of your car, born in Mexico. You rolled down your window and said to Bovino, I'm not a U.S. citizen and you can't catch me. Well, there are some people like that. That's not everybody. But he discovers certain reasons why they should look at you. They look at you I'll explain it in another context so you understand what's going on in a bit. But let me finish this. So they look at you. They look at your amnesty package. You know, they say this is not amnesty. This is I stubbed my toe because my house is so small because I live in this country here with no money and my neighbor hates me. Whatever it is, I'm not believing. Some people have real amnesty complaints, but like I said years ago, and the narcos beat it up and sent all the people here, and Biden accepted it. The narco boat lift, or actually the narco convoy thing, right? The answer is to fix your home country. And we don't have money to fix your home country because the Biden administration blew the wad on bullshit. That's where Trump was. What we were trying to do is reduce those that were coming here so they wouldn't cross the border, so it wouldn't cost us as much. And then take that money and invest it in their country. Again, in some of those countries, microloans, allow them to have a normal life. Not everybody, but a certain percentage. And that's such a small amount of money compared to what we're putting out here. Right. The money you pay to give them a bus ticket across the United States goes a long way in Guatemala, Honduras, Mexico, El Salvador. Although the cost of living in El Salvador might be going up nowadays. People might want to move in. Right. See, that's the other part. We tried to fix Mexico and intelligence. I know intelligence was along with this. Probably global intelligence. We were moving corporations into Mexico, and that's why I tell Trump you have to allow some corporations in these other countries, because they have money, and then you start exporting to them. You see. Believe me, but if you bring up the cost of living, if you bring up the quality of life in their nations. I guess Mexico started building their own vehicles, so maybe not. But it's a delicate balance. So we need to improve their economies and their lives also. Again, but the key is this. You have to make more consumers in those countries. So if you reduce the consumerism in Mexico and other places, again, right, that's where the tariff deals come in. Right? When they buy from us, we buy from them. Right? And there's a balance. But Trump at first was like, no, nothing in Mexico. You got to build it here. Forget it. Got my microphone there. First administration, Trump started going, do you build it here or forget it? I said, well, wait a minute. We need. If we kill the business community in Mexico, the narcos will win. If we kill the business community in Mexico, the narcos will win. Because they're killing the business community. Right. So when we have a situation where there's narcotics, we send in the DEA. Nobody says, why did you send the DEA to my community? Right. When we have a situation where there's a large number of fugitives in a city, we send the Marshal Service. When we have people dumping sewage into our drinking water supply, we send EPA. Right. When we have an explosion of undocumented people beyond what this nation could sustain, causing the issues that we see, we send the Border Patrol and ICE. Right. Now, on those task forces, DEA, Marshal Service, FBI, EPA, there might be other officers augmenting. Right. DEA will call the Marshal Service up, say, we need you for a while. That kind of thing. So again, this is not abnormal at all. It's because the problem is so large. Now, you're going to see some less narcotics arrests. Yes, we're not directly investigating narcotics the traditional way we did it, but we're not going to charge below a certain amount because when it's an immigrant, because we just want them out of here. There's no reason that we're going to sit there and house them and do all this stuff for the next, possibly 20 years, 15 years, whatever it is, 10 years. When we can just go, okay, you go back home. and then we don't have to pay for it. They don't have to worry about them. The key is for the border to stay secure. And I think the people are going to demand that. I think one of the worst mistakes the Democrats are making is the fact that they don't believe, like, some people may feel like, I wish Trump would do it different because I don't feel good about how ICE is doing things. But I think when it comes to election, they'll say, but I don't want it reversed. Right. And it does come off that you're protecting immigrants more than you are U.S. citizens. It is looking that way. Foreign citizens. Oh, those poor boat people. They're just in a boat for a joyride. There's no proof. All right. So essentially, the Pentagon has said that they believed that they were attempting to recover narcotics and were most likely attempting to call another boat to the area. Right. Well, it's combat, okay? There's even an argument to assassinate them, okay? Right. Let's not forget Obama assassinated, and even Biden did. Right. Somehow they left Biden out. Gingrich left Biden out. Only said Obama. Right. I don't get that. I wonder if he owes Biden something. maybe back in the day when he was in the House, Biden was a good guy to him. I don't know. He didn't want to soil Biden there. Right. Maybe he was one of his secret guys. And you know what? Tell you the truth, looking at Newt Gingrich and the time that Biden was there, Biden did do some right-leaning stuff. So maybe Gingrich owes him. Right. But Biden administration did also. Right. And as far as being everyday people, there are very few Latino, especially unlawful immigrants, that are everyday people, okay? Right. That's an illusion. They're part of the machine. Yeah, you made your choices over there. Thank you, Larry. I think dishwashers are nasty. I have one here. I will never probably use it. Not as far as the cleaning the dishes, but they just, the more you use them, the nastier they get. Right, and all that heat ages the plastic. Agreed. I will never use this thing. Just wiped off the top of it there. Turn on the spigot and just wash the dish. It's that easy. Now, when deep state starts attacking, it might get more difficult, but we still get there. So the idea is you're being brainwashed to believe something different's going on. Now, it is a national emergency, and the level is a high level of operation. But again, nobody cared about the U.S. citizens when a task force came in and broke down their doors. Right. You see? Right. I mean, you don't have your papers? Well, you don't have your papers because you're illegally present. And you broke the laws, and now you're going back. Right. If you want to call them papers, call them papers. There's a reason you don't have papers. All right. I mean, you're not going to put it on us that you're illegally present. In fact, you weren't even amenable to allowing our nation to be our nation and our people to be our people, and you just to be, assimilating is an important part of immigration. Assimilation is not destroying your again, it's like appropriation. There's a lot of Native Americans that hated the term appropriation because it was destroying their business. Right? It's not appropriation. This is what we market. So again, it's a kind of this appropriation idea where they don't have to assimilate because it ruins their culture. They're allowed to be their culture. You're allowed to be your culture, but when you're immigrating to the United States, we expect a responsible immigration. Learn our laws, learn, some English would be nice. Right. Now, again, if you have a reason you can't learn English, that's understood. We'll get to that later. But the first part is you try to. But creating these no-go zones, these unlawful immigration zones, you don't want to learn English. You don't have to learn English. You laugh about it. In fact, if I come in and try to live there, you'll destroy me if they tell you to. That's called organized crime and racketeering, but you're an everyday person just working a 9 to 5, right? Again, that's the level of spycraft. So the judges have to be apprised that spycraft exists. Because they're pretty, that judge seems to be psychologically manipulated by PSYOP. Well, stay peaceful. Praise God in all that you do. Praise God.